The automatic doors hissed open, releasing a blast of refrigerated air into the humid August night. Dr. Marcus Reed stumbled through, his left hand clutching his chest, his right gripping his insurance card like a lifeline. The emergency room waiting area stretched before him. Beige walls, flickering fluorescent tubes, the antiseptic smell that somehow always managed to mix anxiety with false hope. A blonde receptionist in lavender scrubs looked up from her computer screen. Her smile emerged reflexively, then froze halfway. Her eyes traveled from Marcus's face to his expensive watch, then back again, calculating something she'd never say aloud. "I need help," Marcus managed, his voice tight. Chest pain, left arm. About 20 minutes now. The receptionist's fingers hovered over her keyboard. She glanced toward the back hallway, where a figure in a white coat emerged, tall, early 40s, sandy hair gelled back with precision. Dr. Alan Brenner moved with the confidence of a man who'd never been questioned. "What seems to be the problem?" Brenner asked, not quite making eye contact. Marcus extended his insurance card with trembling fingers. "Cardiac symptoms. History of hypertension. High need..." Brenner took the card, glanced at it for less than 3 seconds. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. He handed it back like it was contaminated. "I'm sorry," Brenner said, his tone anything but apologetic. "We don't accept that insurance here." The words hung in the air like smoke. Marcus blinked, confused. The pain in his chest sharpened. "That's Blue Cross Platinum. You're listed as in-network on..." "You'll need to go to County General," Brenner interrupted. "They're better equipped for your situation." Something in those last 2 words cut deeper than the pain radiating down Marcus's arm. 3 hours earlier, Dr. Marcus Reed had been sitting in a different building entirely, the State Medical Board headquarters downtown, a marble and glass structure that smelled like power and old furniture polish. He'd been reviewing license applications, his reading glasses perched on his nose, a cold cup of coffee forgotten at his elbow. As board president for 7 years, Marcus approached every case with the same meticulous attention. A young doctor applying for reinstatement after a DUI, a veteran surgeon facing complaints about bedside manner. He read every word, weighed every detail, signed his name only when certain. His colleagues called him fair but firm. The medical community respected him. Some feared him. All knew his reputation. If you violated your oath, Marcus Reed would find out. He'd built that reputation deliberately. 32 years in medicine, cardiology specifically. He'd worked his way from a clinic in Detroit to chief of cardiology at University Hospital. Published research on racial disparities in cardiac care. Mentored dozens of young doctors, particularly those who looked like him and faced obstacles he remembered too well. The walls of his office told the story. Diplomas from Howard and Johns Hopkins, commendations from the state governor, photographs of him shaking hands with people whose names appeared in textbooks, and one personal photo always in the same spot on his desk, his late wife Sarah, smiling in a yellow sundress at their lake house, 2 months before she died. That photo was why he drove the extra 30 minutes to live in Brookfield Heights, an affluent neighborhood where his neighbors smiled politely and sometimes forgot his name. It was where Sarah had wanted to retire. He kept that promise even after the funeral. The board meeting had run late, discussing new policies on implicit bias training for license renewals. Marcus had championed the initiative. The vote carried. He'd driven home on Highway 40, windows down, NPR playing softly, thinking about dinner and tomorrow's schedule. That's when the pain started. Dull pressure beneath his sternum, spreading like spilled ink. His doctor's brain catalogued symptoms, even as his hands tightened on the wheel. He saw the exit for Brenner Medical Associates. New clinic, good reviews, 3 miles from home. He took the exit. A decision that would change everything. County General is 20 minutes north, Brenner continued, already turning away. They have an excellent cardiac unit. Marcus felt his legs weaken. He gripped the reception counter. My insurance is comprehensive. Platinum-level coverage. Your clinic accepts it. I verified online before, sir. Brenner's voice carried that particular edge Marcus had heard before, the one that made "sir" sound like something else entirely. County General is better equipped for your needs. I'm sure you understand. A nurse appeared from the back, young, Asian, her eyes darting between Brenner and Marcus like she wanted to speak but couldn't find permission. She opened her mouth. Brenner gave her a look. She closed it again. Marcus pulled out his phone with shaking hands. Let me call my primary physician. He can verify. That won't be necessary. Brenner crossed his arms. This is a private facility. We have the right to determine appropriate care placement based on clinical judgment. Clinical judgment. Marcus's voice rose slightly. The pain in his chest intensified, but anger burned hotter. You haven't examined me. You haven't checked my vitals. You looked at my insurance for 3 seconds. I looked at your insurance and determined we're not the right fit, Brenner said flatly. County General. 20 minutes. Another patient sat in the corner, elderly white woman, her husband beside her. They watched without pretending not to. The receptionist suddenly found her paperwork fascinating. The nurse had disappeared entirely. Marcus felt the weight of it then. Every assumption, every stereotype, every invisible wall that money and degrees couldn't tear down. He'd spent 3 decades building credentials like armor, and this man had stripped them away without knowing his name. I'm a doctor, Marcus said quietly. I know what a cardiac event feels like. I need treatment now. Then you should go to County General, Brenner repeated, his voice hardening. Before your condition worsens. The unspoken threat hung between them. Get out or we'll call security. Marcus had seen it before, just never experienced it while his heart was misfiring in his chest. He turned toward the door. His vision blurred at the edges. He caught himself on a chair, breathing hard. The elderly woman's husband started to stand, instinct making him rise to help. Brenner shifted his position slightly. The man sat back down. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead like insects trapped in glass. Marcus walked out the way he came. The automatic doors closed behind him with a pneumatic sigh. The last thing he heard was Brenner saying to the receptionist, "Next patient." Marcus sat in his car in the clinic parking lot, engine off, both hands gripping the steering wheel. His breath came in shallow gasps. The pain radiated down his left arm in waves. Textbook symptoms. He knew exactly what was happening to his body, but his mind moved faster than his failing heart. 32 years, every sacrifice, every extra shift, every research paper, every mentee guided, every barrier broken, every promotion earned twice over, all of it invisible in 3 seconds. He'd spent his career believing that excellence was armor, that competence commanded respect, that if he was good enough, worked hard enough, accomplished enough, he'd transcend the assumptions that men like Brenner carried like dead weight. Sarah's face appeared in his mind, not the photo on his desk, but her real face that last day in the hospital. The way she'd gripped his hand when the pain got bad. The way she'd tried to stay quiet so as not to bother the nurses. The resident who'd finally checked on her after 4 hours, who'd written drug-seeking behavior in her chart based on nothing but his own poisoned imagination. She died 2 days later. Complications that treatment could have prevented. Marcus had filed complaints, attended hearings. Nothing changed. The resident got a reprimand and a better job in California. That's when Marcus joined the medical board. That's when he stopped believing the system would fix itself. That's when he learned that power without accountability was just permission to cause harm. His phone sat in the cup holder. He could call 911, an ambulance would come. They'd have to treat him. But 20 minutes to County General, would his heart hold that long? His finger hovered over the emergency call button, then moved to another number in his contacts. His hand trembled, not from the cardiac event, from something colder, clearer. He dialed County General's emergency line himself, told them his symptoms, told them he was coming, started his car and drove north on streets he knew by heart. His medical board ID badge sitting in his wallet like a loaded gun he hadn't needed to draw. Not yet. The memory hit Marcus as he drove. 1992. His first year as an attending physician at St. Catherine's Hospital in Detroit. His mentor, Dr. James Crawford, had arrived for his scheduled surgery consultation. The intake nurse had looked at this distinguished black surgeon and asked if he was there to mop the floors. Crawford had smiled that tired smile Marcus would later learn to recognize in his own mirror. He'd shown his credentials. The nurse had called security anyway, suspicious that he'd stolen the ID badge. 20 minutes of humiliation before the head of surgery arrived and confirmed Crawford's identity. Marcus remembered sitting in Crawford's office later that day. "How do you stand it?" he'd asked, young and furious and naive enough to think anger alone could change things. Crawford had pulled out a leather notebook from his desk drawer. Pages and pages of documentation, dates, names, incidents, witnesses. "Excellence is your shield," Crawford had said, "but documentation is your sword. Keep records, stay calm, build your case, then strike when they're not expecting it." Marcus had taken that lesson to heart. He kept notes on everything. Patient interactions, colleague observations, systemic patterns others missed. When he joined the medical board, those habits became protocol, thorough, evidence-based, unflinching. After Sarah died, the mission intensified. He investigated bias in care with the precision of a prosecutor. 3 doctors lost their licenses during his tenure, all for patterns of discriminatory treatment they thought nobody was documenting. One had been referring black patients to inferior specialists. Another had routinely underprescribed pain medication to minority patients. The third had simply made his disgust obvious enough that patients complained. The medical community learned quickly. Marcus Reed didn't make threats. He built cases, and when he brought charges, they stuck. His colleagues sometimes questioned his methods. Too aggressive, too focused on race, too personal. Marcus never defended himself. He just pointed to the data. Numbers didn't lie. Patterns didn't disappear because they made people uncomfortable. He'd kept a file on every complaint that crossed his desk for 7 years. Hundreds of cases, thousands of patient interactions. He remembered faces. He remembered names. He remembered doctors who treated their oath like a suggestion rather than a sacred promise. And tonight he'd remember Alan Brenner. County General's lights appeared ahead. Marcus's chest pain had stabilized slightly, or maybe adrenaline was masking it. He pulled into the emergency bay. A nurse met him at the door before he'd finished parking. "Dr. Reed?" she asked. He nodded. She'd been expecting him. "Let's get you inside. We've got a bed ready." The difference was immediate, professional, efficient. No questions about insurance until he was on a monitor with an IV in his arm. No assumptions about who he was or what he deserved. Crawford's voice echoed in his head. "Build your case. Then strike when they're not expecting it." Marcus closed his eyes as the medical team worked. His heart rate steadied. His pain eased, but his mind stayed sharp. He knew exactly what he was going to do. He just had to survive long enough to do it. The cardiologist at County General was thorough. EKG, blood work, cardiac enzyme tests, the full diagnostic protocol. Mild cardiac event. Not a full myocardial infarction, but close enough to require overnight observation. They admitted Marcus to a private room with a window facing the parking lot. The irony wasn't lost on him. County General, the place Brenner had sent him like a threat, had saved his life. Marcus couldn't sleep. The heart monitor beeped steadily beside him, proof that he'd stabilized, but his mind raced. At 2 a.m. he pulled his tablet from his bag, accessed the medical board's secure database with his administrator credentials. He typed, "Alan Brenner, MD," the file loaded. Everything was there: education, licenses, certifications, disciplinary history. Stanford Medical School. 12-year practice, board certified in emergency medicine. 0 official complaints, clean record, pristine reputation. But Marcus had learned long ago to read between official lines. He switched to public records, patient review sites, social media, the places where victims spoke when the system wouldn't listen. The first review appeared. RateMD posted 8 months ago. Told me they didn't take my insurance even though I called ahead to verify. Felt very uncomfortable. Would not recommend. Marcus noted the username. Screenshot saved. He kept searching. 3 more emerged, scattered across different platforms over 18 months. All patients of color, all mentioning insurance issues, all describing similar experiences, turned away, redirected to County General, made to feel unwelcome. One mentioned feeling judged before even explaining symptoms. Another used the word humiliated. None had filed official complaints. The system made it hard. Bureaucracy, fear of retaliation, doubt that anyone would care. So they posted anonymous reviews that disappeared into the noise of the internet, invisible, ignored, until now. Marcus's heart monitor beeped faster. He forced himself to breathe slowly. This wasn't anger anymore. This was clarity, cold, surgical, precise. He pulled up Brenner's clinic insurance page. Listed there in bold, Blue Cross Platinum. Accepted. In network. The lie documented in real time. He cross-referenced patient demographics for Brenner's clinic using public health data. The patterns emerged like bones through skin. In a county that was 40% black, Brenner's patient population was 92% white. Not unusual for an affluent area, but combined with the reviews, the redirections, the insurance excuses, the picture sharpened into focus. Marcus had investigated enough discrimination cases to recognize the pattern. Never obvious enough to trigger automatic flags. Always deniable. Insurance issues. Facility limitations. Clinical judgment. The language of bigotry dressed in professional courtesy. But he'd been trained by James Crawford. Documentation was power. Patterns were proof. And Marcus Reed had just lived through the evidence personally. He picked up his phone, called his board secretary's private line. She answered groggy, "Dr. Reed?" "It's 2 in the morning. Carol, I need a full patient interaction audit for Dr. Alan Brenner. Every insurance claim, every patient record for the last 5 years. Cross-referenced by demographic data. And pull his training records. Any complaints from residency, fellowship, any behavioral flags." Silence. Then, "Are we opening an investigation?" Marcus watched his heart monitor's steady rhythm. "We're preparing for one. I'll be in the office Monday morning." "Have everything ready?" He hung up, leaned back against the hospital pillows. The pain in his chest had faded to a dull ache, but something else had crystallized in its place, purpose. Brenner had made a calculation that night. He'd looked at a black man in pain and decided he didn't belong. He'd weaponized medicine, turned healing into gatekeeping. He'd done it before. He'd do it again unless someone stopped him. Marcus closed his eyes. His wife's photo filled his mind. That yellow sundress, that knowing smile. She'd always said he had a gift for justice. That his anger, properly channeled, could reshape systems. "I'm going to keep my promise," he whispered to the memory. Every single one of them. The heart monitor beeped on. Steady, strong, ready. Monday morning couldn't come fast enough. Monday morning arrived with deceptive calm. Marcus sat in his office at the medical board headquarters. Carol's research spread across his desk, like evidence at a crime scene. 5 years of patient data, insurance claim patterns, demographic breakdowns. The numbers told the story Brenner's clean record tried to hide. He drafted the formal complaint himself. Patient name redacted. Incident date, August 14th. Allegation, discriminatory refusal of emergency care based on race. Supporting evidence, documented pattern of similar incidents. He signed his name. Filed it through official channels. The letter reached Brenner's clinic by Wednesday. Marcus imagined the moment. Brenner opening the envelope, scanning the formal language, probably laughing. How many complaints had men like him dismissed? How many patients had given up before the fight even started? Thursday afternoon, Marcus received word. Brenner had responded through his attorney, a standard denial. Dr. Brenner maintains he acted within appropriate clinical judgment. The facility was not equipped for the patient's specific cardiac needs. No discriminatory intent occurred. Patient was appropriately redirected to a better-equipped facility. 2 board members reviewed the preliminary complaint. Dr. Patricia Chen, a family physician who'd served for 3 years. Dr. Robert Ashford, an orthopedic surgeon and board veteran. Both respected, both fair. Both leaning toward dismissal. It's his word against the patient's, Chen said during a closed executive session. Without witnesses or additional evidence, it's hard to prove intent. The insurance excuse holds water legally, Ashford added. Facilities do have discretion about care placement. Marcus listened without expression. He'd expected this. The system protected its own until the evidence became undeniable. He didn't push, didn't reveal his hand. Simply said, I'd like to schedule a formal public hearing. Let both sides present their case. Chen and Ashford exchanged glances. Unusual for such a minor complaint. But Marcus was board president. He had the authority. They agreed. Hearing date set September 18th, 4 weeks away. Public record, official testimony. Brenner would have to appear. Brenner's attorney called Marcus's office twice requesting a private settlement meeting. Marcus declined both times. The lawyer's tone shifted from confident to concerned. They still didn't know the anonymous patient's identity. They were shadowboxing. Marcus scheduled the hearing for the board's largest chamber, sent media notification per standard protocol, then waited. Week 3. Marcus received an email that changed everything. Subject line, you should know this. The sender, Dr. Lisa Okonkwo, an internist who'd trained under Marcus years ago. The message was brief. 3 of my patients told me they had bad experiences at Brenner's clinic, similar to what you're investigating. They're scared to come forward. One agreed to talk, then backed out. I thought you should know. Someone pressured her. Marcus called Lisa immediately. Got the details. The patient, young black woman, respiratory issue, turned away with the same insurance excuse. She'd agreed to testify, then received calls. Anonymous warnings about making trouble, about ruining her reputation, about how lawyers could make her life difficult. She withdrew her cooperation. Marcus hung up feeling the weight of it. This was bigger than one incident. This was systematic, protected. And Brenner had resources Marcus hadn't anticipated. He pulled the other anonymous patient reviews again, tried to contact the users. 2 accounts deleted, 1 never responded. The digital evidence was disappearing like smoke. Friday evening, 5 days before the hearing, Marcus sat in his office as sunset painted the windows gold. His wife's photo watched him from the desk. The evidence was circumstantial. The witnesses were terrified. On the stand, Brenner would simply deny everything. Clinical judgment. Facility limitations. No proof of intent. The legal gray zone where bigotry lived comfortably. Marcus had 2 choices. Drop the complaint and let the pattern continue. Or testify himself. Reveal his identity. Put his own experience on public record. Make himself the witness that couldn't be intimidated or silenced. But that meant vulnerability. Exposure. Every assumption made about him that night laid bare for public consumption. Every stereotype Brenner assumed, documented in official testimony. The president of the state medical board refused emergency care in his own jurisdiction. The humiliation would be permanent. The scrutiny intense. His colleagues would question his objectivity. Brenner's lawyers would call it revenge. The media would turn it into spectacle, but patients would be protected. The pattern would be exposed, and maybe one doctor would lose the license he'd violated. Marcus picked up his phone, called his attorney. I need to prepare testimony. First-person account. I'm the anonymous patient. Silence on the other end. Then, Marcus, are you sure? This will get complicated. It already is complicated, Marcus replied. I'm making it clear. He hung up, opened his laptop, started typing. Every detail from that night. The fluorescent lights, the receptionist's frozen smile, Brenner's tone when he said, your situation, the elderly couple watching, the nurse who disappeared. The feeling of his heart failing while his dignity was stripped away in a beige waiting room. He wrote until midnight. 17 pages, single-spaced, every word true. Every sentence a weapon. Monday morning he'd submit it as evidence. Wednesday he'd take the stand. And Dr. Alan Brenner would finally see his face. The weekend before the hearing, Marcus barely slept. Saturday night he stood in his study, surrounded by commendations that suddenly felt like paper shields. 32 years of excellence reduced to 17 pages of testimony about being invisible. His phone stayed silent. No supportive calls from colleagues. No encouraging messages from mentees. The medical community was watching, waiting to see which way the wind would blow before choosing sides. Sunday morning he drove to Sarah's grave, sat on the bench beside her headstone. The cemetery was empty, just bird songs and distant traffic. He placed fresh flowers, lavender, always lavender. I don't know if I can do this, he said aloud. They're going to say I'm vindictive, that I'm using my position for personal revenge, that I should have identified myself that night. The stone offered no answers, just her name and dates. Sarah Marie Reed, beloved wife, taken too soon. He remembered her last coherent words to him. Promise me you'll fight, for all of us. He'd made that promise holding her hand as machines beeped their futile rhythms. He'd meant it then. But he hadn't known how much it would cost. Monday morning would come regardless. The hearing would proceed. Brenner would sit across from him with expensive lawyers and righteous confidence. The board members would weigh evidence and credibility. The media would analyze every word, and Marcus would have to stand before them all and admit, I wasn't enough. My credentials didn't matter. My title didn't protect me. I was just another black man in pain, deemed unworthy of care. The sun set behind the cemetery trees. Marcus stayed until the caretaker came to lock the gates. Drove home in darkness. His house felt too big, too quiet, too full of memories that offered no comfort. He sat at his kitchen table with cold coffee and his testimony. Read it again. Changed nothing. The truth needed no embellishment. His phone buzzed. A text from Lisa Okonkwo. Whatever happens tomorrow, you're doing the right thing, one message. One person. It would have to be enough. Monday morning. Marcus arrived at the State Medical Board chambers at dawn. The building was empty, the marble hallways echoing his footsteps. He unlocked his office, laid out his testimony, prepared the evidence displays for the hearing room. By 8 o'clock the building came alive. Staff arriving, board members conferring. By 9, journalists gathered in the lobby. Word had spread, something unusual about this hearing. The board president personally investigating. A prominent doctor facing discrimination charges. At 9:30, Dr. Alan Brenner arrived with his legal team. 2 attorneys in expensive suits, leather briefcases, the armor of the professionally protected. Brenner looked confident, navy blue suit, flag pin on his lapel, the posture of a man who'd never faced real consequences. Marcus watched from his office window as they entered. Brenner laughed at something his lawyer said, checked his phone, adjusted his tie. Just another day defending his reputation against unfounded accusations. The hearing room filled quickly. Tiered seating like a courtroom. Press in the back rows. Medical professionals scattered throughout. Patricia Chen and Robert Ashford took their seats at the board panel. 3 other board members joined them. Marcus would sit separately at the president's bench, elevated, centered, with clear sightlines to everyone. 10 o'clock. The bailiff called the room to order. Marcus entered through the side door carrying his files. He wore a charcoal suit, royal blue tie, his medical board pin. Professional, unreadable. He took his seat, looked down at the assembly. Brenner sat at the respondents' table, flanked by lawyers. For the first time, Brenner glanced up at Marcus's position. Their eyes met briefly. Brenner looked away, consulting with his attorney. He still didn't recognize him. Marcus opened the session. Standard protocol. Case number. Charges read aloud. Allegation. Discriminatory refusal of emergency care based on race. Patient anonymous. Date August 14th. Brenner's lead attorney stood. A woman in her 50s, grey suit, practiced confidence. Your Honor, Dr. Reed is sufficient, Marcus corrected gently. Dr. Reed, we move to dismiss these charges as unsubstantiated. The complaint provides no verifiable witness testimony, no concrete evidence of discriminatory intent, and relies entirely on subjective interpretation of standard medical protocols. Marcus nodded. Your motion is noted. We'll proceed with testimony. Dr. Brenner, please take the witness stand. Brenner stood, buttoned his jacket, walked to the witness chair with casual confidence, swore his oath, sat. His attorney handled the initial questions. Brenner's credentials recited for the record. His clinic's reputation, his years of service. Character witnesses, colleagues praising his professionalism. Patient testimonials, glowing reviews from satisfied clients. All white clients, Marcus noted. But that wasn't mentioned. Then the defense's version of August 14th. Brenner spoke smoothly. A patient presented with cardiac symptoms. I assessed the situation and determined our facility wasn't equipped for the specific level of care required. He redirected him to County General, which has a superior cardiac unit. Standard medical judgment. And the insurance? The attorney prompted. We checked his coverage. There were network limitations. County General was the appropriate facility. Lies delivered with absolute conviction. Marcus watched, waited. The attorney concluded. Dr. Brenner acted entirely within his professional discretion. No discriminatory intent, just appropriate care placement. Board member Ashford asked, Did you examine the patient before making this determination? Slight hesitation. I made an assessment based on his presented symptoms and our facility's capabilities. But no physical examination? Ashford pressed. The situation required immediate transfer, not prolonged evaluation. Marcus leaned forward slightly. Time to reveal his hand, Dr. Brenner, Marcus said, his voice cutting through the chamber. Do you recognize me? The room went still. Brenner looked up at Marcus properly for the first time. Really looked. His face changed, confusion, then dawning recognition, then horror. The color drained from his cheeks. Brenner's voice cracked. August 14th, approximately 7:30 p.m. I walked into your emergency clinic with cardiac symptoms. Marcus stood, walked down from his elevated position, approached the witness stand. I presented my insurance card. Blue Cross Platinum. You refused to treat me. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Journalists' pens flew across paper. Brenner's attorneys exchanged panicked glances. Marcus laid his insurance card on the witness table. This insurance, which your clinic accepts for dozens of patients. He placed a document beside it. Here's a list of 30 patients treated at your facility in August with identical coverage. The chamber screen illuminated with the evidence. Names redacted, but demographics clear. All white. You told me to go to County General, Marcus continued, his voice steady. You said you didn't accept my insurance, but that was a lie. So let me ask you directly. Why did you really refuse to treat me? Brenner's mouth opened. Nothing came out. His attorney stood. Dr. Reed, this is highly irregular. You can't testify as both investigator and witness. I can and I am, Marcus said calmly. I'm the anonymous patient in this complaint. I'm also the president of this board. And I'm asking Dr. Brenner to explain why he looked at a man having a cardiac Eventon decided he didn't deserve care. The weight of the question hung in the air like thunder. Patricia Chen leaned forward. Robert Ashford's expression hardened. The journalists in the back row were practically vibrating. Brenner finally found words. "I didn't know who you were." "Exactly," Marcus interrupted. "You didn't know I was a doctor. You didn't know I was board president. You just saw my face and made assumptions. The same assumptions you've made about other patients." He pulled out his tablet, displayed more evidence on the screen. 5 documented cases in 18 months. All patients of color. All turned away with insurance excuses. All redirected to County General. The reviews appeared one by one. None filed official complaints because they were afraid. Or they assumed nothing would change. Or they didn't have the resources to fight. Marcus turned to face the full board panel. "I've investigated discrimination cases for 7 years. I know the patterns, the language, the plausible deniability, facility limitations, insurance networks, clinical judgment, all legal terms weaponized to hide illegal bias." He turned back to Brenner. "You looked at me and decided I didn't belong. You made that decision in 3 seconds, before asking about my symptoms, before checking my vitals, before doing a single thing a doctor is supposed to do when someone walks in with chest pain." Brenner's attorney tried again. "Dr. Reed, your personal involvement creates a conflict of interest." "My personal involvement creates accountability," Marcus countered. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because this pattern will continue unless someone stops it. And I have the documentation, the authority, and the experience to do exactly that." He addressed the board directly now. "The Hippocratic Oath doesn't say first, do no harm, unless the patient makes you uncomfortable. It doesn't include exemptions for people who don't look like you. Dr. Brenner violated his oath not once, but systematically. And he did it because he believed he'd never face consequences." Board member Chen spoke. "Dr. Reed, why didn't you identify yourself that night?" Marcus had been waiting for this question. "Because every patient deserves care regardless of who they are. I shouldn't need to flash credentials to be treated like a human being. Neither should anyone else." The answer landed like a gavel. The chamber erupted in whispered conversations. Brenner slumped in his chair, his confidence shattered. His attorneys huddled, knowing they'd lost before the verdict was announced. Marcus returned to his position. "I'm recommending immediate license suspension, pending full investigation. If the pattern holds, and it will, permanent revocation." Patricia Chen looked at her fellow board members. "I move to accept the recommendation." Ashford seconded. The vote took less than 2 minutes, 4-1. Only one dissent, from a member with known ties to Brenner's medical association. The gavel fell. "Dr. Brenner, your license is hereby suspended. A full investigation will commence immediately." "This hearing is adjourned." Brenner sat frozen as the room emptied. His lawyers gathered their papers in defeated silence. Journalists rushed to file stories. Board members filed out with grim expressions. Marcus remained in his seat, watching. Brenner finally looked up at him one last time. Not with anger. With something worse. Recognition that he'd destroyed his own career through arrogance and assumptions. No words were exchanged. None were needed. 3 months later, the investigation concluded. Brenner's license permanently revoked. His clinic, under new management, mandatory bias training implemented for all staff. 2 additional doctors under review for similar patterns. The State Medical Board's new protocol. Anonymous patient advocates at every hearing. Funded legal support for discrimination complaints. Demographic audits for all licensed facilities. Marcus stood outside County General on a cold November morning, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. This was the place that had saved him when he'd been turned away elsewhere. The irony had become inspiration. He'd established a grant program here, funding cardiac care for underserved communities. The changes were small but real. 5 more doctors under investigation for discriminatory practices. A new bias reporting hotline receiving dozens of calls monthly. Medical schools incorporating implicit bias training into curriculum after Marcus's testimony went viral. He checked his phone. Message from Dr. Lisa Okonkwo. Her patient who'd been intimidated was ready to testify now. 2 others had come forward. The pattern was unraveling. Another message from Maya Rodriguez, a young black medical student he'd mentored. She'd passed her licensing exam. Wanted to specialize in cardiology. Wanted to fight the inequities he'd exposed. Marcus smiled. The work would continue long after him. That was the point. Systemic change wasn't one dramatic hearing. It was 1,000 small battles, documentation building like sedimentary rock, until the weight became undeniable. He drove to the cemetery, placed lavender flowers at Sarah's grave. I kept my promise, he said quietly. It's not finished. But it started. The morning was peaceful. Birds sang in the trees. Distant traffic hummed. Marcus sat on the bench drinking his coffee, watching light spread across the headstones. His phone buzzed again. The board secretary, 3 new complaints filed overnight. Patients finding courage. Marcus would review them this afternoon. He finished his coffee, stood, touched Sarah's headstone gently. I'll keep going, he promised, drove back to his office. The building stood against the morning sky, marble and glass, power and responsibility. Marcus climbed the steps, badge in hand, ready for whatever came next. The system was changing, slowly, imperfectly, but changing, because someone had stood up, because someone had documentation, because someone had refused to let injustice hide behind professional courtesy. That someone was him. And there were more like him coming. Some people carry power they never have to show. Dr. Marcus Reed walked into that emergency clinic as a patient, vulnerable, in pain, invisible to the man sworn to help him. He walked out as president of the state medical board, but that wasn't what gave him strength. His strength came from refusing to let one night define him, from understanding that his humiliation wasn't unique, from knowing that for every credential he carried, there were thousands of patients with none, suffering the same dismissal in silence. Brenner never saw Marcus's titles that night, only his assumptions, and those assumptions cost everything. But this story isn't about revenge, it's about accountability. About the difference between punishment and protection. Marcus didn't save himself, County General's doctors did. He used his position to save the next person, and the one after that, because excellence without ethics is just performance. Power without compassion is just permission to harm. The medical community remembers that hearing. They remember Marcus's question, "Why did you really refuse to treat me?" They remember, because some questions don't need answers. They need change. Every patient who walks through those doors now knows someone is watching. Someone cares. Someone will hold the powerful accountable when they forget their oath. That someone was Marcus Reed, a doctor who refused to be refused, a man who turned his wound into a weapon for justice. And in the end, that's what separates those who suffer injustice from those who end it. Not anger, not credentials, but the courage to stand in your truth when the system tells you to stay silent. Marcus stood, and the world shifted.